Man, Rick's head was massive. Hey guys, Jay. Welcome back to my channel. We're discussing popular culture of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Today I want to take a look at a series which I have a lot of affinity for. It was created by Carl Macek and comprised of 3 different separate Japanese animations. It was produced by Harmony Gold in 1985, and I watched it on WTV Buffalo 29. Today guys, we're going to have a look at Robotech. Wow, Robotech. It really was one of those amazing series which I grew up on. It first aired in 1985 here in Toronto on WTV Buffalo 29, one of my favorite channels growing up as a kid. I remember getting up on Saturday morning for the very first time and watching the pilot episode. It was a little bit different from a lot of the series which I had watched before. Many of the cartoons which I'd watched around this time were Scooby-Doo, the Jetsons, the Flintstones, a lot of comedic and sort of mystery type of cartoons. This series is very, very different, in so much that it was a series about technology, alien technology at that, and humans who were trying to understand and build upon this alien technology. The situations which the Macross crew start to get into are very, very unique. We find out that an alien spaceship has actually landed on the island of Macross. It has incredible technology, and the ruling powers of the world begin to fight over it fervently. When all the fighting is done, the remnants of the world have decided that the technology itself has to be used to better mankind. So they actually start building and shaping the alien technology to serve their needs. This is quite interesting, as we find that the war has actually unified people instead of driving people apart. When the final SDF-1 battleship has been revealed to the public, we start realizing that there is a very heavy military presence on the island. Rick Hunter, a stunt pilot of all things, has come to visit his friend, Roy Focker. Roy is now in charge of the SDF-1 fleet, and it's his responsibility to train all the new recruits in Robotech technology. Almost as if on cue, an alien force entered our upper atmosphere. They have detected the final remnants of the alien ship which landed on Macross Island. The commanders of this vessel have decided to do a sneak attack and try to recapture this alien vessel.
That's a logical speculation, I think.
I agree. It would seem very likely, sir.
Send a scout team.
The aliens are called the Zentradi, and apparently they have been searching for the alien vessel as well. Having found it now on Macross Island on Earth, they decide to take it captive. Once the SDF-1 detects the alien intrusion in the upper atmosphere, a countdown for the firing of the main gun begins.
Every system aboard the ship is starting up. The defense system is activating the main guns to fire.
And the crew of the SDF-1 are powerless to stop it. Captain Global, finally getting to the bridge, realizes the situation and surmises that the alien technology that had been left behind was actually booby-trapped. The aliens had set a trap for anyone trying to find the vessel, and once it detected the alien invasion above, it fired off its main guns, destroying many of the vessels in the upper atmosphere. This has led the Zentradi to send out an attack force, and unfortunately for the people on Macross Island, it's not a good situation. As soon as the alien invasion begins, the Earth Defense Forces are set into motion. Most of the actual attack force are no match for the alien technology. It's only when Captain Global allows for the Veritech fighters to start moving into the city that the actual alien invasion is started to be pushed back.
All Veritech switch to Guardian mode.
Rick actually takes it upon himself to try and rescue a few of the citizens, and in doing so, puts a few people in danger. Once Roy catches up with Rick, he starts to explain how the Veritechs work, and they're both able to help push and defend Macross Island.
Attention Skull Leader, SDF-1 is taking off. Request air cover, over.
We're on our way. Come on, Rick, let's go. Get the lead out.
As the battle continues, it becomes apparent that too many casualties on the ground are being taken, particularly civilians. Captain Global makes a decision to try and get the SDF-1 into the upper atmosphere. He makes the decision to use the new alien technology and fire off their engines. This has never been tried before, but Captain Global feels it's the only way to escape.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Execute hyperspace flow jump.
After being unsuccessful in trying to raise the SDF-1 into orbit, they return to Macross Island, and Captain Global makes the bold decision to use the space fold engine for the very first time, attempting a space jump into orbit.
A fold! I don't believe it!
Impossible in that altitude.
It may be impossible, but they did it!
What'll we do now, Commander?
I want to be informed of their exact location immediately.
Once they rematerialize, it's apparent that they have reached space. But now, to their surprise, they seem to be heading towards a gigantic object in space.
Our jump target was the moon. That's what your large object is.
No, it's too small to be the moon, sir. I'll put it on the monitor screen for you. It's coming at us!
No, we're moving toward it.
It's Macross Island, Captain Global!
Retro rockets, Claudia. Maximum thrust.
To their horror, they realize that's actually Macross Island. They have actually transported the entirety of Macross Island with them into space. Once they've tried to triangulate their position, they realize that they've transported all the way to Pluto.
Give me the reading on our position.
The planet Pluto's orbit according to the computer plot.
The planet Pluto?
Is that
It
possible?
can't be. I was against this fold system all along.
Captain!
Oh,
No. Settle down. Don't panic. All we have to do is refold to get right back where we started. There's absolutely nothing to worry about.
This was the setup to Robotech. As a kid, it really was just a whole roller coaster of things which were happening so quickly. You had this alien technology which had just landed on Earth, rebuilt by humans after a gigantic war, and then, after all is said and done, the aliens who were chasing this one ship are now trying to reclaim it, and because of that, we have to go to war. All of a sudden, Captain Global, the supreme commander of this entire armada, decides to actually try and fold space for the very first time. This is unheard of, and it ends up in the actual transportation of the entire Macross Island into space. Now, the SDF-1 has to take a long journey all the way from the planet Pluto back to Earth. In the entirety of the series, they're attacked multiple times by the Zentradi people. And we find out more about these aliens and actually realize that they're not as evil as we would have them be. This was a great series back in 1985. And as a kid who loved giant robots, I really couldn't be more happy to actually keep watching this. It was at times a little bit boring, as there was a lot of things like political intrigue, interpersonal relationships which I didn't really understand, but I was always happy whenever the Veritechs would go launch and attack and really fight against the Zentradi army. It really was one of those things which I had a great affinity for at the time.
asteroids.
One of the things I really wanted when I was growing up was a Veritech. And it's funny, I didn't really find too many toys for Robotech. Here living in Ontario, Canada, toys were sort of a hit and miss. They just weren't always readily available. Not that they are down south in the States. So I was wondering, has anybody else collected Robotech toys? Let's find out.
Joe Grotesque here from the Retro Cynical channel and the Generation Rad company right here on YouTube. So, Robotech. Yes, I've got some pretty fond memories of old Robotech, even though it was kind of overshadowed at the time by cartoons like Transformers and Voltron. Little did I know later on in the future I would find out that this was an anime. Not only one anime, but a combination of 3 different shows that had absolutely nothing to do with each other. Regardless, it all came together somehow and made a tremendous program. So even though I'm a toy collector and I'm a pretty big collector of Japanese toys, I really don't have a whole lot of Robotech stuff. I do, however, have a pretty uncommon Rick figure, and he's a pretty massive vinyl toy. And I like to keep him on my shelf with all my Japanese guys to remind me of those fond memories I have of Robotech. And aside from that, it's also really cool just to be able to tell people I have a 12-inch Richard.
Hey everyone, Jared the Toy Bro here, and Mega J asked me to relay some of my personal kind of Robotech memories just in general. And you know, it might be kind of weird to think that I don't really have a great deal of memories of Robotech as a toy line or as a toy franchise. They were never my focus. They were never anything that I really even sought out to collect. I do have some, don't get me wrong. I've got some of the Toynami Veritechs, and I've got all of the Toynami Masterpiece figures, the ones that come in the big kind of book boxes. And then I've got some of the more recent Super 7 releases, but they were never anything that as a kid that I really went after because they weren't really around when I was young enough or old enough, I suppose, to really get into them. They were an older thing already by that point. But Robotech has always been a thing for me. Even as a kid, I was watching it when my friends had no idea what it was. I had bootleg VHS tapes from God knows where, really. I have no idea where they came from. But I always had a way to watch at least some of Robotech before it came to the US, like again in the 2000s when it was on Toonami. But Robotech has always been kind of a thing from my childhood, just alongside shows like Masters of the Universe or Thundercats. Those are some of the biggest things in the world to me as far as toy properties or cartoons or just things that I have a lot of nostalgia for, and Robotech is up there for me. It's just one of those things that's always stuck with me, one of those shows, one of those properties that is kind of a quintessential 80s cartoon that I have loved for, well, you know, 30-ish years at this point. I've always looked at the toys and kind of been interested in them, but I've never really gotten into them. A lot of times it's because of the price and the barrier to entry for wanting to have such a huge collection. But I do have a lot of fond memories of what I do have. I have a lot of fond memories of going to like video game stores in the 2000s is where you could get the Toynami stuff. I would go to Babbage's or Electronics Boutique or Software Etc. for those of you that remember those stores, and was able to get the Toynami figures that had very bad articulation or those big transforming Masterpiece figures. So I have a lot of nostalgia and memories for hunting those toys down, but I have so much more fond memories of just watching the show, even to today. It's just one of those things that never escapes me. It's always something that's going to be with me.
At the time, I thought me and my friends were the only ones who enjoyed Robotech. But I found out very quickly, growing up, that there were a huge community of people who enjoyed Robotech just as much as I did. As a matter of fact, here on YouTube, there are a lot of people who enjoy Robotech.
I want to say thank you to Mega J for asking me to share some of my Robotech memories today. And I got the email from him and I was like, yes, I'll definitely do this for Jay. I really like his show. And I have a lot to say about Robotech that I've never been able to say on my own channel. I thought this is a good opportunity to really dive in and share some memories. This is crazy. I still remember this so super well. That it was 1985, as I say, 11 years old, 34 years ago. And back then, the first time I'd heard about Robotech was a magazine. And I was flipping through this magazine, and there was a small article called Robotech, you know, is beginning syndication in America and Canada or something. And I was like, oh, I live in Canada. What is this? What is this Robotech thing? And there was a Valkyrie in there. And I was like, oh my God, it's like some Japanese style robot. That's cool. I like that stuff. And I was intrigued because at that time we had Bugs Bunny and a lot of slapstick Looney Tunes stuff, which I enjoyed. But this article was talking about how this show was very mature. It was for adults, how anime is for adults in Japan. And this is a very mature show and is a very new thing for America. That's all they had to say. I was so intrigued. I'm like, I gotta see the show. So back then, in the 80s and in the 90s, for a certain amount of time, you'd get something every week, and you'd always be upset at your mom if she didn't bring this home from the supermarket, and that was the TV guide. And that's how you mapped out what you were watching on TV for that particular week. So I was looking, and I would go through all the days, but the number one day I would always go to is Saturday morning. Prime time for kids. It was back then was Saturday morning cartoons. It was amazing. So I started going through the time slot on Saturday, and I'd always kind of pick out my favorite shows. So I'm going through the time slots, and I'm like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10. It's kind of one of those boring Saturday mornings. I'm like, oh, it's the usual stuff. I get to 11 o'clock, and I see Robotech written, and I'm like, Robotech, and I immediately remember reading that article, and I'm like, oh my God, that show's starting. So I had one tape that I had in my beta player that I would record shows on. And so 11 o'clock came, and I watched Robotech for the first time. And it was mesmerizing. Obviously, it was the Macross saga. We know, I don't have to give you the history of Robotech. It was 3 different shows brought together to make one show. Later on, I'd be kind of a little resentful for that. But I can never be more thankful enough that I got to see Macross and Southern Cross and Mospeada. That was amazing back then. So I sat down and I watched this episode, and it was everything I could ever want. It was this huge, universal war that was going on. Mankind was in the middle of it. The SDF-1 was this alien technology. They back-engineered it. They, had created these Valkyries, which were called like Vertex. And I was like, this is amazing. This is great. And the characters were really mature, like Roy Focker and Rick Hunter. I haven't said those names in a long time. And Minmay and Lisa Hayes. These characters were really meaningful for me. I just was so enthused. I have my own show on YouTube, Happy Cons Gamer. And I always get very enthused about things. I was enthused back then. If there was a YouTube back then in 1985, I would have been on it. I would have been ranting and raving about this new show. So what ended up happening is it was a few Saturdays it went on. I think it went on for like 10 episodes, then it stopped. And I was like, where's my mother freaking Robotech? Where is it? Why did it stop? I was so frustrated. The most wonderful thing happened. They started airing it every morning, Monday to Friday at 7, I think it was 7 or 7:30 in the morning. And that was my new religion. Every morning, I would wake up. Remember when you were a kid and you'd wake up and you had all this amazing energy? And I would just go down, I'd have my bowl of sugary cereal. I have so many memories of that. I never missed one episode. I was down there eating my cereal, watching Robotech every morning. And it was just so wonderful. And I remember getting to the end of the Macross saga. And I was like, oh, I guess this is it. And I was so it was a really good ending, though, for Macross. It was a really good ending. And then I was like, okay, I guess that's over. And then I looked the next week, or the next day, I'm like, was this another Robotech episode? And then it continued on into Southern Cross. And I must admit, I was a little bit thrown off because I became so attached to the characters of Rick and Minmay and Lisa Hayes and everybody involved in the show. And then all of a sudden we're on to these new characters like Dana Sterling, which was, Max and Maria's daughter. I was like, that's so weird, right? We're going that direction? I'm like, okay. And you know what? I was so invested in the whole mecha characters and the storylines that were going on. I just went with the ride. Like a lot of people bitch about things these days. I just went with it, and I had a good time with it. And then I got into like the Robotech the Next Generation, which was Mospeada, and that was freaking amazing. I really like that one. And this is what's funny as well. I watched the show and I just was like, whoa, this is amazing. So I was so enthused. I called my dad down later in the day. I said, Dad, you got to see this cartoon. This is amazing. It's like nothing I've seen because it was so mature. And so I played it for him. And I think he just watched it just to appease me. He said, "Oh, okay, cool, yeah, it's interesting," and he walked away. He didn't care at all. I just know he didn't care at all, and that's okay. My dad was from a different time when adults didn't watch cartoons. It was just, he was out. He wanted to go out into the yard and mow the lawn or fix a fence. That was his priorities, which are good priorities, by the way. But he had no interest in toys or things like that. That wasn't his thing. We live in a very different generation now. We grew up on this stuff, so it's a lot more socially acceptable than it was then. So yeah, Robotech has meant so much to me over the years. I'm sorry I went on there. I really like Robotech a lot. I got so many memories, and then Christmas one year getting Jetfire for Christmas, and it was actually the Valkyrie that they colored differently, given a red color, and brought over here. And it's created a lot of licensing issues over the years, not to use that design again. But it was so cool. I was like, oh, I got a Valkyrie. I knew it wasn't Jetfire. I knew it was a Valkyrie. I'm like, this is from Macross. I was becoming a little bit more of an expert in my local neighborhood because nobody knew what anime was. No, I would go to school and say, you got to watch Robotech. You have to watch Robotech. And I got a few other people watching it, but it was very different back in the 80s. It just wasn't one of those things like it is now. Anime's huge. Anime was underground, and it was weird. It was very strange to be into a Japanese cartoon series. But I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. But anyways, I had to convince all my local neighborhood about that. But those are some impressions. I could talk for probably an hour and a half about Robotech. There's just so much to say. And then the Sentinels came out. I was never a big fan of that. But Robotech is lived on in my heart, and it's a big part of my childhood from 1985, 86, 87. Those are my golden years of getting up early and watching Robotech, and it was so wonderful. And I just want to thank Jay for having me on so I could discuss that today. So thank you guys.
Robotech really has touched so many people in so many ways. But I've often wondered if Robotech still has the power to move people and to have that same message that it had for me back in 1985. Luckily, it seems that people are discovering Robotech, even today.
Hey Mega J Retro viewers, it's your friendly neighborhood nostalgist Michael Mercy, and I'm honored that Jay asked me to do a little segment on his Robotech retrospective in this episode, and I'm coming at it as a newbie, so I didn't grow up on Robotech, but having been a Transformers fan almost my entire life, I've been well aware of Robotech because of Jetfire. G1 Jetfire was a recolor of a Macross Veritech fighter. So I never had that one as a kid, but I knew some people who did, and I knew that thing was special. As great as all of the G1 Transformers were, the Veritech was, I'm not going to say better, but it was definitely in another league. So having been aware of the Veritech fighters, aware of Macross all throughout the years, I finally just recently decided to finally pop in Macross Robotech, the animated series, check it out, and it blew me away. First of all, the restoration is incredible. It looks fantastic. So the picture quality is nice and crisp. The sound effects, all that stuff is great. But all of that doesn't really matter if what's going on in the story and the cinematography isn't special. And what I'm seeing is very special. And it's really amazing to see a cartoon that came out in the era of syndicated cartoons, which they always get called toy commercials, which a lot of them weren't. They've just got a bad rap. A lot of them had a lot of great lessons and morals, and they weren't about selling toys. They were about teaching kids valuable life lessons and making it fun with the toys to do it. Robotech is way ahead of its time, though. Watching those episodes and seeing how they feed one into the other, instead of being able to watch them all out of sequence, out of order, you have to watch Robotech like a modern-day Netflix series. That's what I think it is, and that's where I started to watch it on Netflix, and I thought, how perfect is this? Because this thing has influenced so many of the modern animated series that we see today. But the thing that really impresses me about the Robotech animated series is the patience that it has. It takes moments to slow time down or stop time and let you catch your breath. So whereas a lot of action shows, whether animated or live action, think they have to throw everything at you, Robotech slows down, kind of like Aquaman, which I just watched. Aquaman takes time sometimes to just slow the action down in the middle of something exciting happening. Matrix did it a few times too. remember the shot of the guys jumping out of the building and reaching for the helicopter. It's okay to slow time down if you've got something really amazing that you've built. Let the audience just take a moment and take it all in. I think a lot of shows and movies have moved away from that. A lot of executives, I think, believe that people just have too short an attention span to be able to appreciate things. Well, I really appreciate time slowing down and giving me a moment to just look around and savor the moment, and that's what Robotech does as well. So I'm really loving the episodes that I've seen so far. I love that there are action-packed episodes, followed by quiet episodes, character episodes. Entire episodes where the characters really aren't in any peril, they're just stuck in a ship and they're trying to find their way back to where everybody else is. Looking forward to finishing this series and then continuing on with the other Robotech series. Kind of feel like Luke Skywalker from A New Hope, when Obi-Wan Kenobi said, "You've taken your first step into a larger world." So I'm not too far into Robotech right now, but I can tell that it's going to be epic, and I can also completely recognize the incredible influence that this show has had on so many other animated programs and some live-action movies as well. Thanks, Jay, for having me on, and thank you for watching. Nerdmas.
Well guys, that'll about do it for the first part of this Robotech journey. I want to take a deeper dive into the other parts of Robotech, Mospeada and Southern Cross. These two series comprise the last half of the Robotech series, and it's really interesting how they tend to fit into the actual Robotech saga. I would like to take a moment and thank all the special guests who made this episode possible, including Toy Bro, Michael Mercy, Joe Grotesque, and of course, the Happy Console Gamer. All these channels have been great supporters of my channel. I follow them directly, and you guys should too. Please check out all their content. They do great reviews on video games, collectibles, toys, movies, and popular culture. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please do leave me a like. It really helps me out. If you have any comments or suggestions on anime, toys, collectibles, cartoons, or anything else you'd like me to review, please leave that in the comment section below. And consider subscribing, as it helps YouTube to realize that I'm doing a great job and that you guys enjoy my work. Well guys, as always, thank you very much for watching. Geek proud. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you'd like to support the channel, please see the link in the description below. I've got more videos on the way, and we'll see you at the next one. Geek proud.